With an absolutely brutal 0-3-0 start to the season, the Buffalo Sabres are once again in disarray. Not only have they started bad, had tons of injuries stacking up, but trades might already start to be in the works. That's just how bad this Buffalo Sabres situation is and how quickly things might get ugly. So today we're going to be breaking down the latest trade rumors around the once again struggling Buffalo Sabres to see which players might stay, which players might be so mad they go, and what happens next. But make sure you guys watch till the end as we go through all these Sabres trade rumors, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the season. It's been a sad week in Buffalo for sure. I mean, they've only played 3 games, yet it pretty much feels like they're eliminated already. But it's not just the record and them going 0-3-0 to start of the season, it's how these losses are going, because in 3 games they've only scored 2 goals and have a league worst -8 goal differential through those 3 games. And it's not like a team like Chicago that maybe hasn't lit the world on fire but has looked really competitive in every single game. Basically every single game has been over from the moment it began for the Sabres, and there's just been no hope in any of these. But that leads us to the question here. With another extremely disappointing start to the Buffalo Sabres, what happens next with this franchise? What happens next with those top-end players? And is there going to be major decisions made about the future of this team? Major changes coming? And it seems like there will be. Now, after the Sabres 0-3 starts, the rumor mill was absolutely swirling. You first had Jeff Marek talking about pending UFA Alex Tuch, who's going to be the biggest decision, at least in the next year for Buffalo, and saying that he still hasn't re-signed. It's not a great situation. You wonder about players leaving. How good would Alex Tuch look riding shotgun with Connor McDavid? Could that be the player the Oilers are looking at here? And in terms of the AAV, it does make a lot of sense. He has a much lower cap hit than especially a lot of power forwards around his range. So for the Oilers, it would make a ton of sense. And this is somebody that the Sabres really need to hone in on, because he's a pending UFA, somebody that has been a leader for this Buffalo team, but doesn't seem all too committed to stay, even though he said he wants to. At the end of the day, staying in Buffalo is a hard thing to accomplish. I mean, my goodness, even if you want to stay in Buffalo, that hasn't stopped Buffalo in the past from sending your butt packing the other way. So maybe this could happen similarly with Tuch. If I'm Buffalo, though, I mean, if I'm keeping one player for the future, it has to be a player like Tuch. I mean, you need older players, more physical guys that can bring energy. And I get that he hasn't had the most amazing start to the season or anything, but he is absolutely a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And if they rinse and repeat that 2015 style when they were trying to tank for McDavid, training everybody no matter what role they needed to fill long term, that's how you get into the position the Sabres are right now. And it would just repeat the cycle again. We also had this report by Chris Johnston that puts in perspective just how serious this has become, saying that clearly it's a failing at many levels to get to where they've sort of slipped as an organization. I know it's something the NHL isn't too happy about, but it truly shows just how bad this situation has become that the NHL isn't too happy about it, that they might have to even talk to Buffalo, sit them down like a parent with a child and be like, okay, we gotta talk about this. Then we get into the Elliotte Friedman report here and a couple of tweets that start to really give us some interesting tidbits about the future of Buffalo, saying that obviously they hired Jarmo Kekalainen from the Columbus Blue Jackets last year. You always wonder if someone sees a person here who could eventually replace them. If you want to make the change you can, suddenly this feels like a very big week for the Sabres. But this really shows the fire that's under the butt right now of Kevyn Adams as the GM, which rightfully so. I mean, he's had some decent moves here and there, but I think the biggest part that's kind of made a stench over his tenure is the moves he hasn't made, the players he hasn't been able to acquire. And I get it, nobody wants to play for Buffalo, but at a certain point, I don't really care about the excuses. Just start putting together a good team. If a team like Winnipeg, in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and a place that a lot of players have no trade clauses for, can be able to put together a consistent contender, Buffalo has 0 excuses in the world. And then we get the last quote here from Elliotte Friedman saying, we basically know that 2 other franchise players, Dahlin and Thompson, have indicated that it has to get better this year. The Sabres don't have a long runway for this. And this is the one that really got a lot of talk, a lot of conversation going, as it rightfully should. I mean, the fact that both of the Sabres' top-end players on the forward group and the D-core are indicating that it can't continue like this, at least not that much longer. things are about to get really interesting. Now, I'm conflicted on this personally, because on one hand, I'm like, okay, especially in like a Dahlin's case, I totally understand this. Buffalo has just not been a position to truly succeed in your career. But on the other side, I'm like, okay, Dahlin and Thompson, have you really played all that well this season? I mean, it's not like they're putting up, 6 points in 3 games and the rest of the team is just absolutely destructive. They haven't been good whatsoever. They haven't even been average for their standards. And I think it's been a big reason for this Sabres slow start. But let's talk about Rasmus Dahlin and Tage Thompson, because even if one of these guys ends up getting moved over the next year, it's probably the biggest NHL trade over the next year. Which, considering the Sabres' past track record of major landmark moves, not exactly very hopeful for their side personally. But let's first talk about the player that I think is the more likely of the two to be dealt, and that is absolutely, without a doubt to me, Tage Thompson. One, I think he is just more adaptable to be moved, making $7.1 million, so the cap hit, especially for a player of Thompson's caliber, is really quite good. In terms of what the contract looks like, he's only on the 3rd year of his contract, but he has 4 years left after this next season with a modified no trade clause and with a $7.1 million cap hit, and that trade clause really isn't all that major, submitting a 5-team no trade list. So maybe you have like your Winnipegs out of the conversation or something, but the wide range of NHL teams are still available. And honestly, at this point, if Thompson got the call that he had to be moved to Winnipeg if he was going to get traded and he had to waive his no move clause, I'm sure he'd already be at the airport at this point. But he's somebody that I think in terms of the personality is much more bogged down by just how inept Buffalo has been than a Dahlin personally. We'll get into Dahlin, of course, in a minute here, but I think in terms of the player who's more likely to just ask out, I think it is Thompson in the end, especially for somebody that is on the younger side of things still, somebody that wants to reach into the playoffs, wants to actually be able to push himself. It doesn't seem like Buffalo is the best spot for that right now, which is a shame because in terms of what Thompson is capable of, he's another player that should be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. But sometimes defensively, he isn't quite what you want him to be. But in the goal scoring department, especially on the power play, he has so many unbelievable moments. This last year, of course, got 44 goals, 72 points in 76 games. But do not get me wrong, on a perennial contender, this is somebody that I think has the potential for a 50-goal season, potentially 80 points, looking as good as Thompson can in those offensive situations. And for somebody that, again, is only 27 years old right now, that type of value on the market would be substantial. In terms of what I see the value for Thompson being, personally for me, I think around 2 first-round picks and either a top prospect or a pretty decent NHL player going back would be around the value I would expect. Maybe another prospect on top of things, but I think you have to give up at least a top player of the future and a couple of first-rounders. At least that would be the hope. That would be where I would draw the line, and hopefully you can get a little bit more if you're Buffalo. If you're trading Thompson in the first place, you have to get immense value back, because even if he wants to go, still he's signed long-term, you still need to keep him there if you have the option to. Now, it will be interesting because Thompson, especially over the last year, has played a lot more wing than center, and I would argue that's where he's probably looked his best. So for NHL teams out there, will they be trading for him as a center or as a wing? Because that will really determine the value the Buffalo Sabres get back. Even though I love the guy, he can be a bit streaky, he can be a little defensively inconsistent, and having that as a wing as opposed to a center, the value goes even lower. And of course, you get into conversations of, is Tage Thompson a playoff guy, trying to project that, but I will say I wouldn't worry about that because most Buffalo Sabres that have been traded seem to work out pretty well in the playoffs, so Thompson could pretty easily do the same. Now we get into the teams that I think can make a lot of sense for Tage Thompson, and I will be honest, this is going to be a little bit rapid fire because there are so many teams that I think will be racing to try to acquire this guy. First things first, I think Anaheim is going to be heavily in on Thompson. They obviously love their big boys, but having a top 6 right wing core of Thompson and Beckett Zedeko would be extremely fun. Plus, of course, a Troy Terry on top of that. But I could see the Ducks potentially getting rid of Terry maybe to try to acquire a Thompson. There's going to probably be a pretty substantial player going back to Buffalo, so maybe that's what ends up happening here, and they have a swap. But in terms of the Ducks and their wants, a big boy goal scorer is pretty much exactly what they need. Chicago is another team that I think would be absolutely up for a Tage Thompson. I mean, having that type of presence alongside a Bedard or especially a Frank Nazar, I think Thompson and Nazar could do so much good together, but having that type of big body as a solidified first liner would be huge for them. The LA Kings could be a team that makes something work, especially if Kempe doesn't end up re-signing. I think they might want to be a team that gets aggressive for a top 6 wing, and obviously a player like Thompson could be there, and also a Kopitar gone. They maybe wanted to try him as a center too, so some options there. Montreal I wanted to include because they'll be in on any top player, but I think they're a team that would want to have him as a center, but they're just gonna have to weigh whether they see him as a center long term, because that would certainly be a unique fit as the second line C that they need for that long term spot. You also got a team like the New York Rangers. Maybe there's a Lafreniere for Tage Thompson swap. That could be interesting. You got the St. Louis Blues. Of course, Thompson with the St. Louis connections there would be quite a bit of fun, but you obviously do have Pavel Buchnevich, Kyrou already there, so it might be a tough fit, but maybe they end up trading a Snuggerud to make that happen. Maybe that's the top prospect and player going back to the Sabres. Who knows? And the last team I wanted to mention was the Vancouver Canucks, who I think are always going to need some scoring, some more depth on the wings. Thompson, of course, would be an insane add for that team, would instantly put their offense so much higher on the totem pole, but it's also the Canucks, and I don't know if they quite have the assets to make that work. Maybe a Lekaramaki and a couple of firsts could do it, but I think they'd probably need a bit more than that. Now, I also want to talk about Rasmus Dahlin here, because this is one that I think is going to be a fascinating player to talk about in the next couple of years, because this is somebody that has the potential to be top 10, top 5 defenseman every single season, but I think consistently gets held back by this Sabres team. As you guys can see over the last few years, he was able to get 68 points, 17 goals last year in 73 games, and continue to improve that defense, continue to get better. And yes, his start to the season hasn't been good, but I think he'll eventually be able to turn that page. The problem to me, though, when it comes to Dahlin and trading him, is that I think that is basically giving up on any chance of the Sabres team doing anything over really the next decade. I could see the argument for trying to win a Tage Thompson trade. I don't think it's possible, but I could see it. Dahlin, though, you're giving up on any part of this current core, any part of the future core, really, because you're not replacing a Dahlin, a franchise top pair defenseman with big size, great skating ability, great habits, and of course, a pretty good offensive ceiling. You just don't give up on these players. You don't trade these players. But again, it is the Buffalo Sabres. But that's why I just can't even possibly imagine the Sabres doing a mistake as big as that, because even if I think it would be hard to win a Tage Thompson trade, there is zero possibility that you win a Rasmus Dahlin trade, especially if you're trying to go for futures, because he's 25 years old. What are you trading Dahlin for futures for? It would be absolutely inconceivable. But again, if Dahlin wants to go, then that obviously does change things. We can talk all day about how badly the management has been, how bad the coaching has been, how bad the players have been, but it really all stems from the top. If I'm the NHL, I'm not mad at any of the players, the management, nothing. I am mad at the ownership of the Pegulas and just how horribly run this team has been year after year after year. All of their attention is on the Bills, and it's left just breadcrumbs for the Sabres. And I think it shows on the ice. It shows on the disastrous product here, and I think, quite frankly, the NHL needs to step in. If they take out the Pegulas from the Sabres, I would be more than happy about that, because they just do not know how to run a hockey team. But especially over the next year, it seems like we're going to have a lot more chatter and conversation about the Sabres top end guys and potentially them getting traded. And I just want to make a breakdown video on my thoughts on especially Dahlin and Thompson, what their trades could look like, what could be in store for them. So hopefully you guys did enjoy on that front. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell for more videos just like this. Of course, comment down below your thoughts on the Sabres right now, what you think they should do, what you think they will do. Do you see Thompson or Dahlin getting traded in the future? Let me know your thoughts down below on that. Of course, if you want to support the channel just a bit more, you can hit the join button to become a channel member. You get exclusive videos every single week. I just released a video talking about my in-depth thoughts on Matthew Schaefer's start to his NHL career so far, so you can check out that if you're a member or want to become a new one. It's just a couple bucks a month, and again, you get exclusive videos every single week. You get to interact on the exclusive member polls, and as well, exclusive emoji to use in the comments down below. So a lot of good perks there, and I appreciate it a ton. Their names will all be up here on the screen. A big shout out to all the current members there, and I will see you guys in the next one. If you want to watch some more videos, you can click on this card as well for more trading room content, and goodbye.